Now, what's the next episode? The Audi AT conversion. So, in the last episode, the first one, it was kind of a hodgepodge of everything I'd done so far. It was like getting the car. Went down to New Electric Ireland. It was a week-long course down there run by Damien and Kevin on EV conversion. I think it was the first one that's been done, full stop. Amazing the stuff that they've done. Damien's converted this stage about 8 BMWs. That's his thing. And from all different types, from basically DIY, building it up from scratch from components, to now the last 18 months, 2 years, reverse engineering OEM parts that have had billions spent on them by the OEMs like Toyota, Nissan and Tesla. So massive amount of learning from there, and which has spurred me on. I'd been planning to do one of these for a few years, but that has really just gave me the kick that I needed. So with that, so we got the car, stripped everything out, engine's gone. Since then, tanks out, fuel lines, everything else to do with hydrocarbons gone. So if you want to have a look, so what we have now is it's complete. I gave the engine bay a complete and utter wash down. Get rid of every bit of oil that was left. I wanted to have a totally clean sort of working space. We came back to putting everything back in here. The gearbox, the motor, the inverter, the new power steering, all that stuff I'll go through now over the next few minutes. Now that the engine's gone, what goes back in its place? So to give you an idea of people who don't have a clue about this stuff, like where's the drivetrain? What's going to happen? How does it operate? Before we even get near the battery. So engine's gone. If you think we're going to keep the gearbox in place, so we want to mate up the leaf motor with the gearbox. Here is the leaf motor. Okay, so that's from 2012 Gen 1. There's your output shaft there. There's your it's a 3-phase motor, so there's your 3-phase. They go back up to the inverter. You've got cooling in here, so you'll have a simple sort of cooling circuit in on this. There's cooling on this and also on the inverter. So you just create a loop with a small rad. It doesn't need that much. These things are so efficient, they don't even give out any heat. There's no even point trying to use this to heat your cabin. We'll get onto that later. That's the connector for the resolver, which feeds back rotor, the position and speed and everything, and temperature and everything back up to the inverter. So inverter, here we go. So again, those 3 phases come out here, go down to the motor. Over on the other side, you have your high voltage, 380 odd volts, 400 volts coming in here. Brains of the operation. All the info comes in and out of the main plug socket here, which I managed to keep. From that, you need to feed it information. So this is the connector for the resolver. I just showed you down the motor there. What you have is this again feeds back all your information, your position, your speed, your temperature and everything. And so it's able to keep the harness and still got all the shielded cabling and all that on it. So, and then out of that as well, you just need these few wires here, which give you basically, you're just powering this inverter up with that's permanent 12 volts. You've got your ignition on and you've got a ground. And then because all like modern cars and all that, modern vehicles in the last 20 years use CAN protocol for messaging and all that, for talking around the car, which is reduced. It's reduced all the wiring and all that. So it's down to a communication system. You just have your CAN high and CAN low, which is like the green and blue colored wires here. So that's digital, but you need some analog signals from your Scalextrics pedal, don't you? So here's my Scalextrics trigger. This is from a Ford Transit Connect, which is one of these ones that was converted to electric by this company. I'm going to put the name down here. I've forgotten top of my head. 4 wires out of it. Basically, it's giving analog commands from your Scalextric trigger, and that all somehow I'm still getting the grips the whole CAN side of things, and I know there's gonna to read CAN messaging, I'm gonna have to use the Arduino DUI and an EV shield, and it's that back and forth digital analog stuff I'm still getting my head around. But in essence, what we have here is this fella here. This is BMW's vehicle control unit, which I built myself. I got the bare board and populated it myself. Second time doing this, because the first time got 90% there. I went a bit, yeah, the chip wasn't ready for it. So second attempt, almost there, almost ready to plug everything in. This is the brainstem. If you think about it, the inverter, that's the brain, right? And this is how you communicate. That's Japanese. This is the English translator. So I can put in my commands in through here, torque commands, converse them, sends them to the brain. Okay, sends to the brain, and that sends out power to motor, and away you go. Got it? Okay. So, how do we connect the motor up to the gearbox, you say? With a coupler. Two things. You've got a German gearbox and you've got a Japanese motor, and they've got different bolt patterns. Okay, got your bolts here. They're not going to match up with the Germans. No, so you fabricate an adapter plate. Big aluminium adapter plate on one side of it, so you can bolt up to the gearbox. And then on the other side, you also have bolt patterns in there, so you can bolt up that. You bolt up them together. But you need the splines to match up as well. You need to couple these fellas up. So I'll show you what I've done so far on the German side. Okay, so coupler. You've got your Nissan and you've got your Audi. You want to couple them up. So what you do is, you can buy the couplers. You can get someone to fabricate them for you, but I'm going the DIY route. So I took out the old clutch out of the gearbox, chopped it up, basically relieved it of its inner spline sort of shaft coupler thing. So that fits like a glove on there. Okay. So, you imagine that you have then the Nissan shaft here. You basically want to put a collar on from here to here and have something that has the splines of the Nissan on this side. Okay, so that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to take this, fabricate it into a thick wall sort of steel pipe there. Okay, so I'm going to turn down, get this on the lathe, turn all this rubbish off, get it down to a nice smooth surface, couple it up, shrink fit it, weld, whatever you need to do. And then on the other side, we need similar collar on the other end that'll slip onto the leaf output shaft. And then you have your coupler. Power out of the leaf into gearbox, turny, and you have movement. Sounds so easy. Another thing to talk about is the power steering. So obviously we lost power steering because the engine was dealing with it. It was doing a lot of things, brakes as well, brake boost. So the brilliant thing about the Audi system is, here's the rack here, steering rack, back and forth. That had high pressure power steering coming from the pump, which sat up on the front of the engine here. That will be, I'll show you now what that's going to go back to. But there was also this fella down here. This is the brake boost. It's a low pressure system which was fed into from the main power steering pump, and that gives you your your power brakes and all that you need. Now, you normally on slightly more modern cars than this, you wouldn't have that, and you have to go for an electrical brake boost assist that's fitted to Volkswagen Audis. It's a simple little unit, but this is all brilliant. I had one of the guys was on the course. He's all things power steering related brainiac, and he had a look over and said, yeah, just need to do connect it to this T the low pressure to the high pressure this at this point, and you're golden, you're good. And it's brilliant because it's so little I need to do on this now. So that's it. But what we plug it into, because we've lost our mechanical, our pulley, power steering pump, we go for the weapon of choice of all, well, most EV builders, and it's the Opel Zafira all-in-one electric power steering pump. So you have, there you go. That's your return into, that's your reservoir. It's all electric. There's your one output. So what I'll do is that high pressure for the power steering we fed into this, and I'll tee off the low pressure for the brakes as well. So I mean, I'll tee it off, or I'm going to go down and the guys will have a fitting that I can put everything into here, into the output. But that is it. After that, you have your ground, you have your permanent high, permanent ground, you have your switched high. You can fit this to a pressure, it can be pressure sensitive, so when you actually start turning, it's not on all the time, so it's only when you're turning the wheel, when the pressure changes, then it'll trigger this fella. Otherwise, it actually sounds pretty cool, because when you hear it fitted to some of the EVs, as soon as you turn the ignition, it starts spinning up. Sounds like something out of Back to the Future. So I'm actually trying to just leave it like that. Sounds much better. So that's it. Opel Zafira, fitted to Mercs, it's well proven. It's a TRW. Forgotten what it is. TRW power steering pump on eBay. You get it for about 35 quid, and it is the bomb. It won't go on fire like other Zafiras. Just let you know that. Lastly, probably the biggest thing, the battery. This is from a 2015 Leaf, which only had about 20,000 kilometers on the clock. Didn't know the state of charge, didn't know its health, didn't know anything. Took a punt, it was a good price. Got it here, weighs a lot. So he had a crane lift it out. Probably see a picture of it. Took it out of the back and it's all here. So we didn't know the state of charge, didn't know what it was like for like a couple of months. Recommended that I got in contact with these guys, Wolftronics, who provide this little piece of kit here. This is the pack sniffer 2, and you can buy this, and you can buy the cable harness and all that already made. I'm a cheapskate, so I just went the hard route and sort of made it all myself. My nephew 3D printed the connector plus the housing and all that, so good man. And yeah, so this I've got another video that I'll throw up there, but that shows the I plugged it in. Good news. It was, I think it was, it helps 97%. It was full 380 volts. It was 57% state of charge, which is perfect for storage like this. It can sit like that for I don't know how long. Somebody will tell me, and share in the comments. But it's perfect. I asked the guys down Arklow as well. Here's what I have. They went bang on, perfect. Next thing you do with this is I'll be cracking this open at some point in the future. I'll make a video of that. But what you have is within this, if you're not familiar with it, it's broken up into modules. So in here, I actually can't remember if there's 10 or 12 or 20 modules, which are all, they sit vertical. They're like A4 size kind of modules, about yay wide. So sit like that in a bank there. There's two or three of them sitting flat there, and then you have about a few sitting flat there. So when you open that up, you can start disconnecting them and reconfiguring them the way you want. The way I want is that the petrol tank, which came out of this fella, left a void underneath, pretty much underneath, yeah, just underneath here, which it resembles, I measured it up, and it is fairly close fit for this section here. So if I could create a battery box for that could be put in and taken out. What I'd like to do is down the road, I mean, this is 24 kilowatt pack. The power density of its zero is it's okay. I mean, in a Leaf, I think it was getting you about 120 kilometers, something like that. But you have new 40 kilowatt packs. You have 50. You have more, 60 coming down the road. My thinking is that if I can create just a serviceable battery box that 2 years down the road, when I can afford then getting the way the prices of batteries are dropping, I can get a battery with better power density, swap this out, put it in, I extend my range by another, whatever, 40-50 kilometers or more. Weight distribution wise as well, haven't quite worked it out, but I'm going to see when I put the motor and everything in here, see how the weight distribution is sitting. That's another question you get asked, like what happens when I've lightened it by like 250 kilos, and you can already see that in the suspension there. It's raised up, and yeah, that'd be something I have to work on as well, to see where I'm gonna put the batteries. Batteries might end up being like 50-50, but we'll have to see what the weight distribution is like. I have to swap out those shocks anyway. They're like, I'd say they're fitted in the factory in 1993. They're just bouncy as hell. So they've got to go. Probably swap with coilovers to bring the suspension back down into reality. One of the other questions I know a lot of people ask, so like people are new to this, is like certification. How is this like insurance? How do you get this on the road? I mean, it's different all over the world, but in Ireland at the moment, I have to get an auto engineer on board early doors. So you can see what I'm doing, and once I'm not affecting the structural integrity of the car, I'm not cutting out parts of the chassis, I'm not cutting out big chunks that fit in batteries and all that. Once I'm not putting batteries on the dashboard, you know, stuff like that, I should be okay. Not put a big spike in the middle of the steering wheel, you know, it's a good way to slow you down. But so once they see that, they can see it's a sensible approach. It's been done multiple times before in Ireland anyway. I mean, I went through the process with Damien. He goes, once they see you're building like reasonable, like a car that conforms, that doesn't affect the safety of the car, they will work with you and they'll advise you on the way. You can't do this, you should do that. If you want to progress any further, don't forget about this. So at the end of that, once they're happy and it's a movable object and it's safe, they sign off. It goes for its NCT, National Car Test. They see if it stops, starts, your indicators work, your wipers work, and they sign off as it's road legal. All that goes off to Shannon down to be re-registered as an electric vehicle. Like in the meantime, you can get it insured. I mean, the insurance, I was talking to a couple of guys as well, the insurance has come right back down over the last few years to the point where it's the same to insure an EV conversion as it would be my A6 outside, probably cheaper. So on the inside, I'm not going to change a lot. Obviously, this stays. I want to keep it as original as possible. Driving one of these with the gearbox in, you're only ever going to use first and second. That's pretty much it. But the other thing I'm keeping, for sure, yeah, the Nokia charger. Yeah, don't have one. But I mean, come on. How about it? Speaker and all. And your twiddly thing. Yeah. So, yeah, now what I will do is add in an Android device in here so you can actively see state of charge and other bits and pieces, temperature sensors, all that type of stuff eventually. So yeah, but I'll keep it as standard as possible to start. Cabin heating is another thing because the electric motors are so efficient, like 90 odd % efficient as opposed to 35% of the petrol engines, which is why you get so much heat from them. Cabin heating is something I'm still looking into. There's a number of different avenues, but you can put in a cabin heater. Now, the one from the Leaf, I'm still trying to get to grips of how it works. Trying to find someone who's actually made it work. So I'll show you it over here. Here it is here. So it's basically, it's got your power in here, and it's some sort of signaling. I don't know how it works, but you've got your in and out here. It's 5 kilowatt, I think, heater. So, and that would be very handy. to use, especially with the fact that in the long term, or maybe short term, I don't know, I'm gonna try and I want to try and make it Wi-Fi enabled. Like basically on the, you put a communication board on this, so if I am inside cold winter morning, we have to log into it, activate the cabin heating, have that running for about 5 minutes till I get into the car, so it's nice and toasty, stuff like that, bringing the car into the 21st century, but like having the character of something from the 90s. Well, it's hardly any of these on the road anymore. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to see, is bringing some of these back, which would have been crushed. This eventually you see them being crushed all the time, and it's just such character. And this one is mint. On the charging side, it's the last thing I haven't really touched on. A few ideas, but I'm gonna go for, CCS charging, which is the one that's being fitted to most. It's fitted to the Teslas and a lot of the modern cars, modern EVs out there. And the way that the infrastructure is being rolled out now across Europe, the world, CCS is the way to go. But I'm also going to fit CHAdeMO, which is what's fitted to the Leaf. So you can see it here. I actually just backed this up just to see what it looked like. Bingo. So yeah, so I'll fit that somewhere else. I'll put the CCS point here, and the rest somewhere else. And if I just roll this forward, I open the boot, I've got loads of room in here as well to put maybe the charger you could go in here, but also there's going to be high voltage junction box and all that, which can go in here. If you think about it, then the battery kind of sits underneath here behind the seats. There's loads of room underneath there to do something, but and then it means it's a service. It's a useful car, as in the boot space isn't affected. So the floor mat goes back in, everything's fine. You have the safety cut off back there as well. So there'll be safeties in the front and the back where you can just like literally pull. It's like this here. This is a Prius pack. So you have this is safety pull here. Something similar to this, where it's just that if something does go wrong, there'll be fuses built in as well, so they'll go pop. But if anything else, there'll be like fail safe. There'll be redundancy. So there'll be fuses and there'll be physical things you can pull. So when you're working on the car, you can just literally isolate various areas. To knock out the high voltage. That is it at the moment. The next step is I want to get the power steering done next week. I want to get that boxed off. That's parked. That's going to be a fairly simple one. That as well takes into account the brakes. That's all parked. I've got that marked off. After that, it's coupler. I've got the chance now to get a broaching tool, which then if I get the right measurements of the spline of the leaf shaft, which I'm still searching for, I've got a contact now, should be able to get them next week, get the broaching tool, then I can make the leaf end of that coupler and then fabricate the two, the Audi side, leaf side, coupler, done. After that, it's the adapter plate, and when I get the adapter plate and everything, I can get everything back in. I have to pick myself up a gearbox as well. They're like 10 a penny. I should be able to pick one up next week after. And yeah, because I'd like to get all that done back in the car, see what it looks like, offer it up so I can start building the frame to add the inverter and see how it all sits inside. And just roll this back. See how once the motor's in, gearbox, motor in, just to see how far it sits out, where then I can put the inverter probably up here, and then where I can put the extra battery packs. So I'll also have a small rad here. Got this is the, I'm keeping this little coolant rad thing in for the power steering and brakes, just handy to have. Again, I was advised just to, hey, it's there, just stick it back in, doesn't take up much space. And yeah, and there's the coolant reservoir as well, the original, the OEM Audi one, so that can go straight in. And yeah, there's a couple other bits and pieces, but you know, I'll put them in as I'm going through. That's it in a nutshell. Hope it's a bit more informative than the first time. The first video was just complete. Here's the car, I'm ripping it apart. This time I hope it's a bit more informative, and yes, hopefully start making some progress.